This podcast is brought to you by the American Enterprise Institute.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, rate, review, and share.
Thanks for listening. Here's our show.
What the hell is going on?
What's really going on?
We said, what the hell happened? You don't have to know what the hell is on it.
They see what's going on.
I don't know what's going on. What is going on? We must find out what is going on.
Hi, I'm Danielle Pletka.
And I'm Mark Thiessen.
Welcome to our podcast, What the Hell is Going On? Mark, what the hell's going on? Hollywood version.
Well, music industry version. We're talking to our friend John Ondrasik of Five for Fighting, who is he has become the tribune of a generation in speaking out about so many of these important issues. He wrote a beautiful song, very sad song after the Afghan withdrawal about our abandonment of our Afghan allies called Blood on My Hands. And then he wrote, when Russia invaded Ukraine, he wrote a beautiful song about the Ukrainian struggle called Can One Man Save the World? And then he wrote a beautiful song called Okay about the plight of the hostages after October 7th. And now he's done a new version of his hit song Superman, celebrating the chance that the hostages will come home and see their homes again. He's just such a courageous voice, particularly, and it's funny, this shouldn't be a courageous thing that he's doing, because calling for hostages to be released, speaking out against Hamas terrorism should not be a controversial thing. These are simple moral messages that everybody should be behind. And yet the music industry has been just absolutely complicit in its silence in the face of these atrocities, in the face of Hamas massacre on October 7th, its horrible holding of hostages for hundreds of days and refusal to release them. And he's had to really be courageous to speak out against these things. I'm just so honored to call him a friend.
Yeah, no, listen, he's a great guy, and I think you're exactly right. He should be one of many. He should be in a huge line of people who are seeking to use their influence, their sway, especially with the younger generation, to bring compassion to, sure, absolutely. I have no problem with compassion for Gaza because many in Gaza are victims of Hamas, just like the Israelis are, and to the hostages and to the victims of this war. This was not just Israel's 9/11. This was as if 9/11 happened 10x proportionately to the state of Israel. We've said it before, and I won't stop saying it. It was the worst attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And yet it has, instead of unleashing a wave of compassion that similar terrible events have done in the past, not in Israel, but in Africa and elsewhere, has unleashed a wave of anti-Semitism. And the music industry, but I would say not just the music industry, the entertainment industry has been entirely complicit in this. And the reason that you and I and John know the exceptions is because we can count them on one or two hands.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
We talk about what distinguishes him from other people, but I don't understand why someone like Gary Sinise is a lone soldier in these battles for U.S. troops. These are such important causes. People like Taylor Swift, people like Barbara Streisand, they have so much lift with so many different generations, and what they use it for is to enrich themselves, period.
And what's also amazing is that these are, we're talking a little bit about why people don't speak out in our conversation. And John was saying, I don't know what I would have done if I was just trying to make it in the music industry and this happened. Would I be saying the same thing? It's hard for people. And, why are people in other areas in the music industry not speaking out? Because they're trying to make it. They're trying to feed their families. They're trying to put their kids through college and all the rest of it. Are multi-millionaires who have succeeded already, who are billionaires in some cases, right? Who they've got huge success. If Hollywood or music industry, got mad at them, they're so powerful they could crush them back. Taylor Swift, there's nobody's going to cancel Taylor Swift because there are entire industries that are built on her back. And so why are these people, what are they afraid of?
Because they have no moral courage.
A mean tweet? Who cares? You have a platform for a reason. Use it.
Well, and they will use it for certain niche issues that are, that are lefty articles of faith, who should use what bathroom, but they're not going to use it for the Jewish people, including Jewish Jewish artists. So I want you to hear something, because Barbara Streisand has not been especially courageous or good. And excuse me, Bubala, but you have had a career. I don't think you're about to be dethroned. She posts, last week, as I know our listeners know, what she calls this beautiful young couple, right? These two young Israeli diplomats outside the Jewish Museum at a gathering of peace builders, people looking to build rapport between Israelis and Palestinians, how to get aid into Gaza. These were no conservative firebrands here, and they were shot dead by a terrorist in the streets of Washington, D.C. And Barbara writes, I can't stop thinking about this beautiful young couple that was gunned down stepping outside the Jewish Museum in D.C. They were about to be married with their whole lives in front of them. Did that shooter know that these two people were trying to build bridges for a better future in the Middle East, especially for Palestinian children? How ironic. Okay, that's, fine. Good enough for me. The responses: Mossad cover-up, wake up. Read the room, Barb. Shut up, Barbara. Another lie by Zionists. Babs, you were my hero for 47 years, but delete your account. He was a Zionist who agreed with genocide, no sympathy for them. Yes, he did. That's why Mossad and the Israeli government had them killed. You keep telling yourself that, Babs, because nobody else believes it.
Yep. And she's apparently, all these people are so afraid of getting some angry commenters. I mean, every column I write has an angry comment. It's like,
Absolutely.
why do you care? That's also part of this culture of Instagram and social media. It's all about the comments. We
You're
want
right.
to post
Who
things that
gives a
everybody
damn?
will tell us how wonderful we are and how much they love us. And if they don't comment, then our hearts are broken. It's like, who the hell cares what these, some guy, eating Cheetos
guy
in his
eating-
mother's basement thinks
Bingo.
about your post about two Israeli kids who were killed in the prime of their lives. But
That's
they
the
do
thing.
care. They do care. That's the problem. And so just, here's when I joined the Washington Post and started writing my column, my editors gave me a piece of advice. I said, what should I know as a new Washington Post columnist? And they said, don't read the comments. That was the number one piece of advice they gave me. So my advice to Barbara Streisand and Bono and all these other people is say what you know is right and don't read the comments.
Because who cares?
Who cares?
Right? Who cares? If they said to you were fat, would you care? If they said to you that you were old, why do you care?
Yeah, they probably would.
They will. And on that note, so folks, you may remember John Ondrasik. Obviously, he's a Grammy-nominated singer. He's an incredible performer. He has spent the last several decades writing really just personal songs with incredibly strong and, as Mark says, courageous social messages. He's done 6 studio albums. He's been featured. He's a songwriter as well as a singer. 350 films, TV shows, and ads under his, and Mark, this is Mark's, of course, true secret, under the hockey moniker he has for his band, 5 for Fighting. Right, Mark, what is 5 for Fighting? It's 5 minutes of time in the
Detention.
box. Right. Time in the
You're gonna call it
box.
detention.
Detention. I'm not a hockey fan.
You go into the box, you feel shame, as
There
they
you
said
go.
in the great movie Slapshot.
Most
John will know what I'm
recently-
talking about.
Most recently, John has been using his platform to advocate for Israel, denounce the holding of hostages and the October 7th attacks, and he recently updated, and we will play this for you at the end, so stick with us, updated the words of his song Superman that rose into the top 10 after 9/11 to highlight Israeli hostage Alon Ohel and other hostages still held by Hamas.
Yeah, some of his colleagues in the music industry needed to go in the box and feel shame. So the name of his band is perfect for this topic. Here's our interview. Well, John, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Mark. Hey, Danny. How are you? Good to see you.
Great to see you back.
It's great to have you back. I just saw you live at the Birchmere with a star-studded retinue of guest singers and guest guitarists with John Roberts from Fox. I was struck by some of the things you said in between songs about the music industry. And I wonder if I wish all of our listeners could hear what you had to say on the stage that day, because it was very moving and very important. So could you sort of tell us the thoughts you shared with the audience that night in the Birchmere, and what your thoughts are on the music industry and the entertainment industry broadly when it comes to anti-Semitism and all the rest?
Well, first of all, it was nice to see you guys. You had very good seats.
Thanks to you.
It was sold out.
Well, and I know you got some really good shots of John Roberts shredding on Queen, which was certainly a highlight for me. But yeah, as I've been talking about and we've talked about since October 7th, one of the great shames of the aftermath of October 7th is the silence of the music industry and the arts. Of course, I was honored to play at the Concert for New York after 9/11. And every living icon got on that stage and condemned Osama bin Laden, stood up for freedom, stood up for America. But since October 7th, you see very few of those people speaking out at all. Bono will make a little quote here or there, but, none of them say free the hostages. None of them can say simple moral things that has nothing to do with Israel. The end of my video of the OK song, We're Not OK, is Martin Luther King's quote, silence in the face of evil is complicity. And I don't think I'm overreaching when I say the music industry is complicit in the anti-Semitism running amok around the world. It is very depressing for me as a songwriter. The music industry likes to hold itself up as the leader of human rights. The Live Aid, Sun City, the Concert for New York, go down the list. But for some reason, they are morally paralyzed, and I don't think there's any other way to say it, but it's a historical disgrace.
I was just looking actually at what one of the singers said about this. So, we're all roughly the same age. I think I'm the oldest in this little group. But, we grew up in an era of Farm Aid and USA for Africa, and We Are the World. And in fact, there was a fantastic documentary on that I just saw. Michael Jackson. There was nobody who was not involved in that in the early days. And it is so striking to me. It's not just Israel. Israel makes us passionate, and it's a cause that I know the three of us care about a great deal. But 150,000 people have been murdered in Sudan. Where's Hollywood? What has happened to the moral compass of the entertainment industry? Do you have a theory?
Well, I think certainly for the younger generation, if you look at the Macklemores of the world, they've been indoctrinated by what's indoctrinating many of our kids. If you look at polls, under 30 to 40% support Hamas. How can that happen? You can talk about TikTok, you can talk about the media, you can talk about social media. So I think for the younger artists, they're caught up in the fad of Free Palestine. There's nobody to give them another opinion. It's groupthink. But you can't have that excuse for folks of our generation. We know better. We know better. We understand what's going on. You wonder how the Holocaust had ever have happened, right? How could that ever have happened? And now we see how. We see people that are not indoctrinated, not fools, not useful idiots, silent, and like so many were in 1938. So again, I think it's moral cowardice. Many of the leaders in the music industry are Jewish. They're Jewish, and they are quiet, and they are stamping down some of their artists. So I think it's really, as you mentioned, it's not just the music industry. It's everywhere. It's our college campuses, it's industry, it's media. So this whole kind of tilt to Marxism, which really what it is. And of course, the Jews are always in the front line, but I really believe it's the battle for civilization right now. And it just so happens that, Israel's getting the heat. But look, if you're on a college campus and you hate Israel, you hate America. I remember when I was in Israel a year and a half ago, I talked to Sharansky, and we were talking about Ukraine, actually, because he's Ukrainian, and he'd seen my Ukrainian song. And he said to me, 20 years ago, somebody asked him, what's the biggest threat to Western civilization? And 20 years ago, Sharansky said, American academia. And the arts, again, I think are always a loss leader for kind of morality. I mean, our buddy Andrew Breitbart always said politics is downstream of culture. So when culture is kind of losing its mind, I guess we shouldn't be surprised that the arts are falling into that, I think, moral cowardice trap. And how we get out of it, I'm not sure.
Which came first, the chicken or the egg? I mean, it's like you're seeing the college campuses now exploding with this virulent anti-Semitism, and you're seeing artists like I don't remember who those idiots were at Coachella, and Macklemore and some of these anti-Semitic artists like that, and their messages are being carried on TikTok and all the social media. Which is it, or is it just feeding? Is just sort of a vicious circle that they're all feeding each other in this river of filth?
Well, I think the problem is they get no counterpoint. Now, are the algorithms being manipulated on TikTok? Yes. Is that our fault for allowing China to basically indoctrinate our kids? Yes. Is it our fault that we allow Qatar to send billions of dollars to our Ivy League campuses? Yes. But on the other hand, it's like the media. There's been no consequences. There's no consequences for not even allowing a Jewish student to cross the campus at UC. Nobody's getting expelled. And so when there's no consequences, and whether it's in the media, whether it's in college campuses, why should people change behavior? So thank goodness there's finally consequences. Thank goodness the new administration is, I call it defunding Harvard, but giving consequences. And I think that will have an impact, not just allowing it and basically burying our heads in the sand. So thank goodness that we have an administration. Marco Rubio has been saying this for years, and who basically stands not just for Israel, but for sanity. So let's see. I'm cautiously optimistic. I know this is going to take decades to overcome because it's decades in the making, but finally there's people standing up for sanity. And I know that makes all of us a little bit more optimistic and relieved, because for 4 years, there's been no consequences for any of this insanity.
It's not just the no consequences. They literally rewarded the students who are committing the anti-Semitic acts. The Trump administration just cut off another $100 million from Harvard. And in the letter to the GSA instructing to cut off the contracts, they pointed out that there are these two students at Harvard. One's an editor of the Harvard Law Review. The other is a student of the Harvard Divinity School. They physically accosted a Jewish student, surrounded him, held him back by keffiyehs, pushed him around, and chanted anti-Semitic slogans at him. And Harvard, not only did they not cooperate with the authorities, they actually refused to help them identify the other students who were perpetrating this. And the one kid just got a $65,000 grant to work for CARE. If that had been a black student, they would have been kicked out.
A Muslim student, maybe not a Chinese student, but yeah. And part of the problem too, Mark, if it was a black student or a Muslim student, it would be front page New York Times.
Yep.
It would lead every media outlet. And of course, we have Scott Pelley ranting at Woke Forest about, oh my God, we're losing all our liberties at our colleges and everybody's shutting down the press. The press is complicit too, because they don't cover these stories. Nobody beyond our kind of bubble knows about these students at Harvard. Shabos, the hero, the kid over there, he'll put it out there. But again, I think it just goes to the whole culture of this kind of, again, woke oppressor Marxism that's infiltrated everything. Certainly arts has always leaned that way. But yes, you just can't make it up. It just sounds so insane. And every day you hear one of these stories. But again, until there are consequences, until people are suspended and expelled, I don't believe anything. I went to Cornell. You know what? The new president there, he's a Jewish man. He's sane. He's taking steps. For me, I'm like, until kids are expelled, you're not getting your tuition back, and we are not accepting this on any level, I don't buy it. I think, again, most of these presidents believe the kids are oppressed. They are free Palestine. And until we have leadership at these schools that, is like an SEC school, the racist schools, the SEC, I don't think we're going to see much of a change. And, hopefully they continue to defund these schools. But while these presidents and faculty are there that are 99% Marxist, why will it change?
No, listen, I agree with you. I think people will make assumptions about you. Oh, it's another Jew, or it's another this, or it's another that. First of all, tell us a little bit about you. And then we've been talking about anti-Semitism. We've been talking about October 7th. But you wrote a marvelous song, Blood on My Hands, about the Biden withdrawal from Afghanistan, about which we've heard nary a peep about the women of Afghanistan and their loss of all rights from a group of people who profess to care about the women, to believe all the women.
Right.
Right. And you played in Ukraine. I mean, you've been a champion for a lot of really, to my mind, important causes. Tell us about you and how you got there.
I've always had a great appreciation for freedom. The honor of my career is performing for our troops and writing songs about our troops and about freedom. I've never been someone to stand on a soapbox and lecture my politics. As you mentioned, Blood on My Hands was the first one that I guess I kind of was very explicit in who I was critical of and why. But again, to me, these are all moral messages. If you abandon your citizens to the Taliban and your allies that have fought with you and maybe saved your life to the Taliban, that's not a good thing. If you can't stand against Putin, the tyrant, well, it's not a good thing. And if you can't stand against Hamas, to me, these should not be political issues. Of course they are. And I'm not Jewish. You don't have to be Jewish to condemn Hamas. You have to be sane, and you have to have a heart and a soul. And it's interesting too, Blood on My Hands, you guys might remember, YouTube took it down because it was having an impact. And that became a bigger story than the song. So I quickly kind of lived through the media cancel culture. They were forced to put it back. And then with Ukraine, of course, initially it was very well received on both sides, but many folks on the right attacked me. Matt Walsh from my pals over at the Daily Wire said I was doing the work of the devil with Can One Man Save the World? And so to me, these have nothing to do with sides, with politics. They're simple moral messages that I think everybody can agree with. But of course, both on the left and the right, I think there are forces that don't believe that. We can talk about the evolution of Tucker Carlson, which has been very disappointing. and you're seeing kind of this woke right. I haven't seen any kind of the woke right anti-Semitism till the last few months. For the last, since October 7th, all the attacking to me, the reason I have to hire more security is because the left, the crazy woke left. But now you're seeing it from the right. And so I think we have to be aware of both, and both have to be addressed because both are very dangerous.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I agree with you about the timing as well. I don't know what to say. I don't have a brilliant theory about what has prompted this outbreak on the right. It is notable and lamentable. But what happened? Tell us the story about how they took you down, because I don't know if you noticed, but the Israeli singer Yuval Raphael at the Eurovision contest, she had her Twitter taken down, and Kanye West, whose new song Heil Hitler, has not been taken down. Was this something that protesters got done on your YouTube channel? How did that happen? And how did you fight it?
Well, I think what initially happened, because Blood on My Hands was really becoming a problem for the Biden administration, that many, the minions, you can go on YouTube and you can say, this is offensive, and I had a warning label before the video because it showed the horrors of the Abbey Gate attack, and it showed the horrors of women. So I had not for kids warning, but I think when you get enough of those, they initially take it down. That's the nice excuse, or it's basically people at YouTube who don't want you criticizing the left. But anyways, they were forced to apologize and put it back. I heard that actually was not her account, but I do have to say, and again, I think it'd be interesting to hear your guys' thoughts. Out of all the things that have happened in my lifetime, Elon Musk buying Twitter may have been the most important thing for freedom and for freedom of speech, because that has been the one outlet where we can talk about 60 Minutes deceptively editing the Kamala Harris video. We can talk about things that nobody else will talk about, and they can't be stamped down. They can't be deleted. The Babylon Bee basically saved the world. Who would have thought? So again, I think certainly free speech is at a much better place now than it was. But then of course you look at Europe and people go into jail, for saying a mean tweet. So yeah, it's how we got here, I don't know, but I still feel kind of optimistic with the new administration, and whether you like Elon Musk or not. And nobody's taken down my songs anymore. But of course, those forces are still there and they're not going to go away.
Let's talk about your evolution a little bit, because, in my living room, I've got a case of all my CDs because I was in from the CD era, and I've got all the Five for Fighting CDs in there. I was a fan of yours before I got to know you a long time ago. And you weren't political. You were just a beautiful singer-songwriter who made beautiful music. And then you decided to start becoming sort of the Bob Dylan of our generation. I guess the Bob Dylan of the right or the center or whatever you call it. You're the moral force in the music industry. That's such a beautiful, heartening story. But when did you make that choice? How have you chosen to, you did it with the first song on Afghanistan, but then you've continued to sort of lean into this new persona, this using your platform to speak out where others won't. How did it happen? Why did you decide to do it?
Well, thanks, Mark. And I know you're a massive music fan. I still have stacks of cassette tapes of my Five for Fighting demos, as a novelty. And I know
they're coming back, cassettes.
Yeah, well, everything's coming back.
I just got an LP player for the first time.
Well, again, you know more about music than I'll ever know. So I know how to make it. I'm not, there's music fans and then there's music fans, right? I'm a sports
Fanatic.
fan. I can talk sports, but I love that passion for music and the history. And certainly I've been blessed to realize my childhood dream and still do shows and people come and still make music that seems to resonate. But it really was, the Afghanistan withdrawal really kind of was tectonic for me, because I guess I was naive and I always felt that, well, presidents do crazy things, they say crazy things, it's the nature of it. But our military, our general, they are the last source of honor, and they will not sell their soul. But when Millie and Austin came out and started echoing the narrative of what an extraordinary success was this withdrawal, and that scared me. And I also had friends risking their lives going down to Afghanistan to rescue our own citizens. This incredible woman that does this amazing work was going down there to rescue our citizens. I'm like, what is happening here? We've lost America. We've lost our soul. So that basically, I think, maybe scared me straight. And the last story I'll take, because when I wrote the song and I sent it to some folks, they're like, it's good, but you can never put it out. Your career will end. And I thought about that and I was hesitant. And to be honest with you, if I was 30 years old trying to make a living and trying to build my career, would I put it out? I don't know. But I thought about a song I had written 30 years ago called Last Great American. And the song is about John McCain. When they came to take him out of the hellholes in Vietnam, said, no, that guy was here first. You take him, I'm going to stay. And it may sound trite or hyperbolic, but I thought to myself, if John McCain can stay in a Vietnamese prison, I can release a stupid song. And I'm glad I did, because the song became something very significant to our veterans. To this day, do not have closure for the abandonment of their allies. I'm glad to see the administration is looking into that, and maybe we'll have some consequences. But I'm really glad I did. But after that, I'm like, I'm not going to do this again. But here comes Ukraine, and Putin invades, and here's this little guy, this comedian standing up to Putin, and then I'll never do it again. And October 7th was different, Mark, because after October 7th, I wasn't like, I got to write a song about this. What do you write? I mean, there's no words for that horror. But what really inspired the song were the months that went by after that. And you saw the collapse of the media, the UN, Amnesty International, our college campuses. You saw the collapse, the arts that we've been talking about.
The music festival.
At a freaking music festival that for peace, for a bunch of lefties that loved their Palestinian neighbors. They were all not only killed, but they were defiled and raped and kidnapped. And that scared me, and frankly, it made me angry enough to write that song. So again, every time I do one, I hope I don't have to do another. But I have to say, the Harvard song is on the tip of my tongue. So I might have to be that. That might be coming really soon. Don't send your kids to Harvard. So that might be the next one.
I cannot wait for that one. So, John, this is something I've obviously studied, history, and then I became a Middle East person. So I've spent a lot of time with issues relating to Israel and to anti-Semitism, and I know them well. Lack of courage is not something new. The New York Times never reported on the concentration camps on the front page of the paper until the war ended, despite the fact that they knew about it. Hollywood didn't talk about it, despite the fact that Hollywood was, as anti-Semites love to remind us, absolutely dominated by Jews who started Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, who started Warner Brothers, who started, everything, right? And this silence, which is complicity. Mark and I have talked about this a lot on the podcast. And the thing I think angers us even more about this is that it's not silence about everything. It's silence about Jews. If this was George Floyd, if this was about Black people, if this was about Latinos, if this was about trans people, we can go from a large group to an ever more small niche question. They'd all be out there with their fists in the air. But somehow Jews are special. You live in this community. I don't know those people. I can't sing. I can't act. I can't do anything that is required in Hollywood. Do you get this?
Yeah, and again, I think it reflects the culture. And in a way, turning over these rocks is great to expose these frauds that we've been seeing for decades. Women's rights groups. Right? Women's rights groups are not women's rights groups. They are activists for the left. You look at Amnesty International, and they're not about freedom for people. They're for activists on the left. So a lot of these groups have been grifting for years. And the sad thing is you can make a lot of money doing this. You can make a lot of money, kind of grifting and standing for these leftist causes. Very few. And also with the media, frankly, becoming dominated by leftists too. It's not about morality. It's about what feeds your audience, what puts money in your pocket, and what supports your beliefs. And of course, fighting for the Jews doesn't check those boxes, even though nobody's been more sympathetic or proactive for civil rights, Black Lives Matter, all these leftist causes than the Jews. And I think it's been a big awakening for many of my Jewish friends, many of them very liberal, who thought, well, we marched with you, we stood with you, we stood with George Floyd, and where is everybody now? I think they're still coming to grips with that. Many still, Jewish folks on the left are still, it's kind of like Trump derangement syndrome. They hate Netanyahu so much that they cannot come to grips with this reality of what's happening to their nation and their countrymen. Again, we probably should be surprised. Take the college campuses. This has been going on for 20 years. So why should we be surprised there's these radical anti-Semitic acts with no consequences? Because all the folks that run these universities agree with Free Palestine. They agree that America is an evil, horrible place. So why should we be surprised? If we don't use the arts to combat what's happening, it can't be political speeches, it can't be Wall Street Journal op-eds. If the arts are not part of fighting back this culture war, we will lose, and the right does not understand that.
No, listen, I couldn't agree with you more. Bono, great tribune of justice who worked his butt off to support people who suffered from AIDS and worked his butt off to get the United States to cough up cash for AIDS sufferers in Africa, has no such compassion. He spoke out this weekend and he said, and this is my second favorite, the moral equivalency argument. We need to free the hostages and we need to free Israel of Bibi Netanyahu. And it's like, okay, I may not have voted for him, you may not have voted for him, but he's the democratically elected leader in the only democracy in the Middle East. But you're exactly right. There's, if they can't say free Palestine by themselves, they're going to say something that suggests that there's a moral equivalency between Hamas and Israelis.
And the fact that their president is one of the most anti-Semitic leaders in the world.
No question.
Yeah, they have to qualify everything if they even have an ounce of courage, because they still want to get invited to the parties. They still want to be part of the crowd. Springsteen can go on a rant against Trump for an hour, and that's fine. You can do that. But can he say free the hostages? Doesn't seem to. So again, I think it's also exposing the frauds that are many of these folks that have kind of built their legacy on human rights. And look, Bono's done a lot of good stuff, and I don't think he's a bad guy. But it just shows the paralyzation, the moral paralyzation of what's happened in the arts. I think the world would have been different if on October 8th, these artistic leaders had come out and said unequivocally, like after 9/11, this is evil, free the hostages. But the fact that they didn't, I think, is another reason why we are where we are.
Well, he's a perfect example of this culture you're talking about, because right after October 7th, he was doing a show at the Sphere in Las Vegas, and he changed the lyrics of In the Name of Love from early morning, April 4th, shot rings out of the Memphis sky to early morning, October 7th, and talked about the beautiful kids at that music festival that had been killed. And now all of a sudden he's equivocating, 20 months later. What the hell is going on with that?
As you said, 20 months later, he finally releases a statement, maybe because of the two kids who were assassinated in D.C. the other day. But yeah, it just goes to show you how broken society is and how broken the arts are. And again, we can lament it for hours, but I'm like, what can we do about it? We can support artists. We can support people who are not afraid to say simple truths. And what we've been doing, we can, like with you guys, we can support media that does not put an article on their opinion page in the New York Times that says, they're still trying to figure out why that guy shot those two kids. New media is growing more powerful. Just Trump's election alone shows you that the power the arts had over politics has waned. There was a day when if you had like Obama had every single icon in the world at that Greek palace, and that moved the needle. And so I think the fact that the arts does not move the political needle, that the media does not own the politics anymore, is a healthy thing. The rest of us, we can only do what we can do. And I think, what? We've looked at the arts and sports for our moral leadership way too long anyways. Why are we looking at people like that can shoot 40% from three or have a hit song? Why are we looking at them for kind of moral leadership anyways? I understand celebrity. I understand that. I love my favorite actors. But why have we been looking to them for moral leadership anyways? So again, I think people reevaluated it. And I like the fact that their power has kind of dissipated because they frankly have not earned, especially in the last 19 months, any stature.
I couldn't agree with more. So I'm curious, when you write about Afghanistan, when you write about Ukraine, when you write about the hostages and you go out and you perform, I know you've got very loyal fans. Do you hear from other people who are more reticent, that they're nervous to speak out, that they need to be hip with the pro-Palestine movement? Do you hear from other people that this is something, or are these people just silent, ignorant?
No, I do hear from people in the music industry that thank me and say, I really appreciate what you're doing. Of course, I have to remain anonymous. They always qualify. And I kind of frankly understand why they're saying that, but I have a disdain for that. I understand, people have jobs. I was talking to someone who worked at CAA, a Jewish person, a very high profile job, and is trying to make a difference in that organization. But she's in fear of losing her job. And, I understand people have kids in college, they have mortgages, they have their careers. But I always say,
CAA, Ari Emanuel, CAA?
Ari Emanuel, CAA. Yep. Yeah, he was at a dinner I was at the other day. With each one of us that speaks out, it gives permission to someone else. And it puts people, either you inspire somebody or you shame them. And they both work. So I think it's important that we continue growing these voices. At least in Hollywood, you have have Patricia Heaton, you have Deborah Messing, you have a few from completely both sides of the spectrum standing up for sanity. But in the music industry, there's virtually nobody.
Scooter
And,
Braun, I think, has been
yeah, Scooter's been good, but Scooter needs to get his artist to say something. I appreciate what he's doing and what he did with the Nova Festival, but Scooter Vaughn, his voice is not going to move the culture needle. You know what would? Justin Bieber or Ariana Grande. Now, they're probably indoctrinated like anybody else. But I tell all my music industry friends, they're like, yeah, we put a letter with 100 signatures in the New York Times. I'm like, what you need to do is to get Ziggy Marley to say free the hostages. Ziggy Marley has a Jewish Israeli wife. I think a lot of these folks, think, and I appreciate anybody who will say anything. But what they're doing, the few folks that have been supportive, I don't think will move the needle, because the only way that moves the needle is if people that have billions of fans come out and say simple truths. That will give people permission to rethink the dogma they've been taught. And nothing breaks through walls more than music. And that's why I think this new version of Superman supporting the hostage has resonated so powerfully, because music, people will listen. If you sing me something, I will listen to you more than if you lecture me about something. And so I think that's what, again, our friends on the right don't understand. And that's why music is so critical. Can One Man Save the World resonated? Because it got into Russia and people in Russia heard it, where they're not going to hear a speech. We need a Doge of the arts, where we're having this soft power through the arts and resources and talent, and that's what we really need to fight this culture war. Unfortunately, unless we get Elon Musk on board, maybe he's a music fan, that's not happening as we speak.
Did you get any pushback from your label or from people saying, John, don't do this? You're going to ruin your career. Why do you keep going out there and sticking your neck out?
A little bit. There'll be someone that stands up at a show, screams Free Palestine, and starts yelling at me. It's interesting. My biggest market is the Northeast, which is typically very blue states. And I remember when we were touring with Blood on My Hands, there were people that didn't necessarily initially like that song because it was criticizing their guy, criticizing Biden. But before I'd play it, I would give context about why I wrote the song and that it's a moral message, and that, we abandoned our Afghan soldiers who we promised that we would save them. And people didn't always walk away agreeing with me, but they listened and they considered it. And nobody stood up and walked out. And that's what we need to have. We need to have the conversation, and music allows that to happen. So I think for me, whatever pushback I've gotten, when there were some Afghan vets there who came up afterward and told me how important Blood on My Hands was to them, when there's people waving Ukrainian flags, when somebody brings me a dog tag of a hostage, when that happens, all that other kind of pushback stuff seems fairly trivial. Because when you talk to hostage families like I do, anything, somebody not buying a record or not licensing my song seems pretty ridiculous. And I think that's frankly where I am in my life.
Good for you. I'm so proud to know you, and I mean that. And thank you, Mark, for introducing me to John. Really, you are right that one person can make a huge difference, and it really impresses me what you've done.
Well, if one man could save the music industry, it might be you. Could you tell the story of how you rewrote Superman and how you played the piano in Hostage Square? Tell that story that you stole at the Birchmere show. And could you play us out with your new version of Superman?
I would love to. Yeah, well, over a month ago now, Edith Owell, who is the mother of Alan Owell, reached out to me. Alan has been hostage now for almost 600 days. Alan is a piano player, and his piano is in Hostage Square. It's called the Yellow Piano, and it's just sitting there. And people walk by and play it. When I was in Tel Aviv a little over a year ago, I sat and played his piano. I played my song Okay in it. I performed that night at Hostage Square. And when she reached out, she said, can we do some collaboration to keep the spotlight on the plight of my son? And I said, of course. And she initially wanted to write a new song. But the more I thought about it, I thought maybe, Superman as the song for one of the songs that recognize the heroes of 9/11, perhaps that would be a song that would have more significance. Because, of course, for our Jewish friends, October 7th is their 9/11. And I thought, well, maybe we should do a new version of Superman. And as I mentioned at the show, when she sent me a picture of Alone in his Superman jammies at 8 years old, it made it very clear that we should do Superman. Certainly, it broke our hearts. And as we were recording the video in Tel Aviv, they were shooting it, and I was in the studio cutting a new version. It became very clear that we had to change the lyrics of the second verse, which is, the current lyric is, wish that I could cry, fall upon my knees, find a way to lie about a home I'll never see. Well, of course, many of the hostages have been released. These hostage family members are superhuman. Edan Alexander, the last American hostage, was released, thank goodness, few weeks ago. So we needed to change that lyric to wish that I could cry, fall upon my knees, find a way to fly to a home I will soon see. And the whole reason we did this project is the goal that I believe will happen, that soon I will be able to get on a plane, go to Tel Aviv, sit at that yellow piano, and next to me will be playing Superman a duet with his family, all the hostages surrounding us, and also recognizing the hostages who did not make it home. So that is our goal. I'm glad it's been received well, and I'm very grateful to you guys for all you do fighting this fight and sharing the versions on your podcast, on social media. I also want to go to one of those crazy new age concerts you guys go to every year. We have to put that on the books as well.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you. Well, will you play it for us?
You got it.
I can't stand the flight. I'm not that naive. I'm just out to find the better part of me. I'm more than a bird, more than a plane, more than some pretty face beside a train. It's not easy to be me. Wish that I could cry, fall upon my knees, find a way to fly to a home I will soon see. It may sound absurd, don't be naive. Even heroes have the right to bleed. I may be disturbed, won't you concede? Heroes have the right to dream, and it's not easy to be me. Up, up, and away from me now, it's all. You can all sleep sound tonight. I'm not crazy or anything. I can't stand to fly. I'm not that naive. Men were meant to ride with clouds between their knees. I'm only a man in a funny red sheet, digging for kryptonite on this one-way street. Only a man, a funny red sheet, looking for special things inside of me, inside of me, inside of me, inside of me. It's not easy to be me.
Let us know what topics you'd like us to cover. You can get in touch with the show by emailing us at whatthehell@aei.org.
Or you can reach us on Twitter. I'm at dpletka.
And I'm at Mark Thiessen. That's Mark with a C.
Please rate and review the podcast. If you like the show, please subscribe, share it, comment on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this.
Thanks for listening.